Hey guys, so I'm back with another video from my messy apartment. I managed to have it look really messy here within less than 3 days. But on the good side, my coupon order actually arrived today and I bought some toilet paper, which is important because I only had one roll of toilet paper provided by the host of this apartment. And I finally have a full fridge. So the coupon order was actually divided in like 3 packages. So the first package was this carton of banana uyu, so banana milk, then a batch of 30 eggs, and then 12 yogurts that I have stacked in here. And also you can see bananas. I just put them in the fridge just in case. And there's another order coming with water and orange juice, but just in case I also have some milk. I bought some milk as well. And then these ones I still have from my journey from Warsaw because I wasn't sure if I was able to buy anything for the first days. And then I also have this this one, it was from a previous order, food delivery, and then I still have the peach juice. So yeah, that's pretty much how my fridge currently looks like. I can see the light, but I can also see the bones again. I don't know what else there is to say. I'm doing my best not to run away. So now that I showed you all my food that I ate so far in this quarantine, I thought I would just get you started with all the information you need if you want to come to Korea during the current pandemic, or during the current situation, or if you're just curious about anything. So let's get started, I guess. So if you want to come to Korea right now, you need to be aware that there's 2 types of quarantines, depending on how you enter the country, meaning with which visa you enter the country. So the first case would be a short-term visit, or you come as a tourist, which I would highly suggest you to not do, because in that case you have no other choice than to go into the mandatory facility quarantine, which is provided by the Korean government. And it costs around 2.1 million Korean won, which is around 1.8k US dollars or 1.5k euros. However, if you arrive on a long-term visa, meaning you acquired a visa from a local Korean embassy before because you want to study here, you're here for an exchange semester, or you want to work here, then you have the choice of either the mandatory quarantine, which still costs you 2.1 million Korean won, or if you have a place to stay, then you can also self-quarantine at the place. But here's where it gets difficult, because the problem here is that with the self-quarantine you need to be able to have a place for yourself, and technically Airbnbs are not allowed or not considered suitable for self-quarantine, because a lot of Airbnbs have shared spaces such as bathrooms, toilets, or even entrances. And for the self-quarantine you need to make sure that all the facilities you use or you might use are only for your own use, so no one else uses them. So that's why a lot of Airbnb hosts will be reluctant or hesitant to take you in. So if you want to self-quarantine at an Airbnb, make sure to, before you book the Airbnb, make sure to ask the host if it's okay if you're spending your 2 weeks of self-quarantine in here, and maybe explain the situation why you're coming to this country, and maybe he will take you in and be kind enough to let you self-quarantine at his place. So if you're good to go, meaning you have a self-quarantine place to stay at, or you're fine with paying those 2.1 million Korean won for the government facility quarantine, which can be nice because they provide you with 3 meals a day, so you don't have to worry about getting food during quarantine. And you have your visa, or you're coming here as a short-term visitor, then all you need is, unless you're one from the high-risk countries, then you just need your normal documents. You don't need any health checkups or any negative COVID-19 test beforehand, then you're good to go. So for the arrival, I already explained some of the parts in my previous video, but I will try to keep it short and just list the checkpoints. So the first checkpoint will be the body temperature screening, where they will shortly check your health declaration form that you either filled out on the plane already, or which you can fill out yourself at the booth before the body temperature screening checkpoint. They will just check if you filled out everything. They will probably ask you whose number you put down, just out of curiosity. It's usually the shortest checkpoint out of all of them. So for the second checkpoint, it will be the checkpoint where they will ask you where you will be staying at if you have a long-term visa, and whose number you put down again, and they will ask you if the person knows, if the person is aware that you're coming to Korea, and they will also set up your self-quarantine app, which I recommend you to already download beforehand to avoid any longer waiting times, and I will link the app below. Then there's another checkpoint where they will contact the person whose number you put in, so please make sure the person is aware that you gave them your number and that the person will actually pick up, because especially if you arrive early in the morning, the person might not be awake yet, so just give them a heads up that they will pick up and that they confirm the address you're staying at, or that they can make sure that they're available. Because in my case, my friend, I had to give them another number, which was my friend's number, so they called him, and afterwards, after a few days, he invited me in a Kakao Talk chat room with my health officer in charge, who's in charge of checking up on me, and from that on, the health officer in charge of you will contact you directly. After setting up your app and confirming that the person in charge of you in Korea, or your friend knows that you arrived in Korea and confirmed all your information, you just have to fill out a few more forms where you just fill out your address over and over again, your name, your birth date, and so on. So it's just a lot of paperwork overall, and then you're pretty much good to go. So after all those checkpoints, you just go straight to immigration, where they will check and maybe ask why you came to Korea at this time. But don't worry, if you already been to Korea, it's just the usual procedure, and if you haven't been to Korea yet, it's nothing to be afraid of. Like, they will not ask you some tricky questions or anything. And after that, you can go straight to baggage claim. You can take your time in that case because there's no people or no one to like observe you or control you in this area. So you can go to the toilet, you can sit down for a bit, and then after the baggage claim there will be the customs, where you need to hand in your customs form, which you need to fill out before. It's kind of the same as before the pandemic if you've ever been to Incheon airport. And then when you get to the arrival hall, it will be a bit different. So there will be officers asking you where you headed, if you're headed to Seoul, if you're headed to another place in Korea, and they will put a sticker on your clothing so the other people in charge there will know where you headed. So if you're headed to Seoul, you have the most options, meaning there's the van, a bus, and a taxi. So in my case, I took the taxi because it's the most convenient, because for the van you need to make sure there's enough people boarding, so you might have to wait. As well as for the bus, the bus is the cheapest option, but it also for me, I think the most inconvenient option, because there's special times where it goes and it departs, and it will only take you to your nearest health center, but from the health center you need to find your own way to your self-quarantine home, so that's a bit inconvenient. For the taxi, you just have to try to make sure to find your right destination, because there will be signs everywhere saying this taxi or this stand is information for the province Gyeonggi-do, which is the province surrounding Seoul, or the area surrounding Seoul. And if you're going to Seoul, in that case you can go to the travel information from Seoul. There will also be an extra stand for taxis to Seoul. And so in my case, I just went to the taxi stand for Seoul, and they will show you a chart with prices depending on which area of Seoul you're going to. So in my case, it was 70,000 won. And I was like, okay, no waiting time. As for the COVID-19 testing, depending on which time you arrive, you might have to wait until the next day to get tested. So that means if you arrive in the morning, there will be no issues, especially if you're just headed to Seoul. So the taxi driver will take you to the next health station, you get your COVID-19 test done, and he will take you straight to your apartment. Or with the bus or van, he will drop you off automatically at the health center station where they're doing the COVID-19 tests, or it will be like a booth setup, which is like kind of like a drive-in where you just walk in and get your test done, and that's basically it. So, but if you arrive in the afternoon, or even in the evening, it might be that those health center stations, those testing stations are already closed. So you need to wait until the next day to get tested, meaning you might have to walk to the next testing station, so they will let you know where the testing station is, and you have to walk there because you're not allowed to take a normal taxi or take a bus or a metro. But usually there will be a testing station within walking distance. So once you've arrived at your self-quarantine apartment and already got your COVID-19 test done, you're pretty much good to go for the 14 days quarantine. And in my case, I had to figure out some things which I will share with you, and some tips which might be helpful in case you're staying at a self-quarantine place. Please make sure to bring some cash with you, whether it would be cash that you can withdraw from an ATM at the airport, or there's also a money exchange bank place right before you go out to the arrival hall after baggage claims. So if you need some money, please make sure to get some money from there, because regardless if you want to take the van or the bus or the taxi, you will need money. Also, if you want to order delivery, there's very few choices. If you do not have a Korean card or someone who can pay for you, because the issue with Korean delivery apps is that you first need a Korean number and a Korean bank account. If you do not have a Korean number yet or a Korean SIM card yet, I would highly recommend you to get a friend or the host of your apartment to help you out in this case, because with the Korean delivery apps you need a Korean number and you also need a Korean bank account or some sort of Korean payment option, and PayPal is not one of them, unfortunately. Also, pretty much no Korean delivery apps except for in credit cards. If you struggle to find delivery or you don't immediately know someone that might help you, make also sure to bring some snacks with you, just so you don't starve yourself in the first few days of quarantine. So yeah, those were my tips and just how quarantine works and how everything at the airport works. If I forgot something or you have certain questions or tips for quarantine, for self-quarantine, please let me know. You can write them in the comments anywhere you want. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask them. And for me, I have around 6 days of my self-quarantine left, so hopefully I'm out soon. And once my semester starts, because here I'm here for studies, I will film another video about my studies and how university life is, I guess, during quarantine. Not quarantine, but during COVID-19. So yeah, see you soon. Bye bye.